So as man's personality is traumatized, his ego will come out as a defense. The ego can then be used as as a manipulative organ to control and manipulate the emotions of man, so that all he can see is his five sense reality, and his principal import is charged with trying to satiate his five senses, or the desires of his five senses. And that has to do with the ego. It has to do principally with the intellect, the male-dominated hierarchy. This nurturing feminine aspect, which appertained to the Western Hemisphere, tended to be repressed to a large extent, in the same way that the conscious mind repressed the subconscious mind in man. What was called the subconscious by analytical psychologists, or the unconscious mind. It's also the gateway to the intuition and to the extramundane world. And that had to do with this Western Hemisphere in the Earth, just like the Eastern Hemisphere in the Earth had to do with this analytical aspect. The Western Hemisphere had to do with the analogic aspect. Here you see the Western Hemisphere, the Eastern Hemisphere. Again, you see these currents that circulate between the two to try and sustain balance. Well, there's also these currents in the soul of man, which are mined in the brain of man through the limbic system, which are at the center of the corpus callosum, which links the right and left side of the brain. However, to a large extent, the left side of the brain, the left side of intelligence, has taken control and repressed the right side of the brain, so much so that most people don't even know that there is a non-material world, an extramundane world, outside of the intellectual faculties, because they are so, the right side of intelligence has been so repressed, the intuitive aspect. And that has to do with also the feminine aspect, and humanity has been repressed, the goddess principle, as opposed to the male-dominated hierarchy. So it also has to do with the way societies tend to be structured. In the Western Hemisphere, among Native Americans, societies tended to be much more egalitarian and sharing, whereas the structures of social and socio-economic structures in the Eastern Hemisphere, especially in Western Europe, tended to develop along lines of male-dominated hierarchy. They became very hierarchical, and that's one of the problems that's provided this imbalance now. It's very ego-centered. So the ego is just completely out of control. There's no balance in the Earth system anymore, because the Earth system has become so overweeningly structured on the side of the intellect and the ego. And it tends to go out and just exploit and consume and do all these hierarchical structured things that are very repressive. It also tends to develop a very wide gap between those who are oppressed and the few that are at the top of the pyramid that are doing the oppressing, because it's very hierarchical and structured around these male nuclear family systems, rather than the clan system, which we'll get into in a future lecture. And there's a very different kind of economic structure that pervades these clan systems that would actually provide a solution for a lot of the imbalance on the planet now, including the financial crisis and economic balance, which has to do to a large extent with the imbalance of the male-dominated hierarchy repressing the feminine egalitarian structure, which is more socialistic and sharing. Now here we have another picture of the